So today is wreath making day, and I'm going to show you 3 wreaths that I'm going to make. And you know, wreaths are not only used just for Christmas. They make a great decorative idea for spring. And I tend to like wreaths that are not very complicated looking and that are a little bit more handmade looking. One is going to be a wire framed wreath. I'm going to show you how to create a wreath using a wire frame. This is a pretty old-fashioned way of making a wreath, but they still exist, and they're a styrofoam wreath. They're really and very easy to use, and this wreath is going to be made with some burlap that I've purchased. And then I also have some grapevine garland, and this is going to be a wreath that I'm going to hand twist myself, which is typically the type of wreath that I like to use, something that's very loose and organic looking. Cut off some of our grapevines from our garland, and so I've just got a very long twisted piece here, and I'm going to twist this into a wreath. But I want to form it as I'm going, and I don't want it to be really tight. I want it to be organic. So the first you're going to do is create your circle, and with all of your vines, you're going to take a piece of wire, and you're going to wire this so that it creates your form, and you're going to wrap your wire around once, and then you're going to twist it so that it's nice and stiff. I'm going to go around another loop with it, but if you can see, I'm not really taking the full form. I'm going a little bit more into the wreath, and I'm going to wire that. In the same spot. And I'm going to start with the bottom apex here, and I'm going to create on these 2 shapes. So I'm going to rest it right into the wreath, and I'm going to grab both sides of this wire and just twist the wire around the frame of the wreath. Try to open up the clump of what you're wiring. You know, don't just leave it. Some of these things can fan out to give it a little bit more texture. When considering the shape of a wreath, it does not have to be symmetrical. So you don't have to keep it balanced like this. You could take and you could go right up the sides of these. This is called Excelsior, and very easy material. It's just shredded wood. It's really used for shipping, but it's a great material to make birds' nests with. All I do is I get a small piece of it and I wrap it around my hand. And so I've sort of created a little well in the middle of it, and I will just go around and I will create that well. And I think that that's going to sit right there in the middle of my wreath to finish it off. And now I'm going to finish this with a beautiful gray ribbon that I think will be the perfect touch to it. I love to use this wide satin ribbon for wreaths. It's not very stiff, so it's made to just look like it hangs. And I cut a pretty long piece because I'm going to want to have some tails on it that will hang down. the best way to do this, if you want to make a V-shaped tail on your ribbon, is to fold it in half, seam to seam, like that. And you want to cut from this point and cut up towards the seam. So hold the ribbon taut between your last two fingers in your thumb and your middle finger and your first finger, pull it taut, and at an angle, just slowly cut. And you're keeping tension on it with your fingers. And that's going to give you a nice finish edge. The next wreath I'm going to make is a moss wreath. So using this old-fashioned wire frame, we are going to mound up the moss so that it makes a nice round circle, and from there we're going to build on top of it. First, you want to attach the wire to a working point, and you want to do it on the back side of where your wreath is going to be. So I create a little bit of a ball shape, and I set it right into that wire frame, just like that. And I'm not going to put too much wire into this, but I am going to go once through the middle as tight as I can. Come back around on the frame. Create another one. I'm going to push a ball into it. And I'm going to push this into the other ball. Take my wire while I'm holding it. Once through the middle. And then you can form a better shape. So this is going to be the last piece that I use here. I'm going to wire it around and finish this off. I like very architectural looking things, and for me, I don't want to hide this stem. I actually like the way it looks. So I'm going to find a point in the wreath that I like it, and using a pre-cut piece of wire, I'm going to wire this right in. To our wreath, we're going to add some of these dried vines that I collected from my backyard. And I want these to sort of just be freeform on their own. I've got some really beautiful sheet music. I collect old sheet music, and I like to make little curls out of the paper. And what I do is I cut the paper in half. Then I fold it in half again, and I will cut a long streamer up the middle, leaving a good portion at the end. So in essence, we have 4 streamers here, and then I'm going to curl each one with a pen. Just finish those 2 off with a little bit of the reindeer moss. And we're going to add some of our boxwood scraggly branches to this. And so now we've got some form of a wreath going on here. So I picked up this really beautiful French silk ribbon, and I think that this is going to finish off the wreath really beautifully. It's sort of a light purplish champagne color. And there we have another autumn wreath. So the foam wreath is going to be done with burlap. So we're going to start in one spot, and you want to fold in the end. You don't want the end sticking out to start your frame. And you're going to stick your pin through it. These pins will really hold really well. And all you want to keep doing is just keep folding and twisting and pinning the burlap. And one of the tricks of not seeing the pins all the way around the frame of the wreath is to overlap the burlap as you go. So now we've got our wreath covered in our burlap. And you can see that I went around the edge and inside the middle because I don't want to see the styrofoam frame. For this wreath, I decided I wanted to do a gold and white theme. So I'm going to use the feathers. I'm going to use the mushrooms, the seed pods, also going to use this fantastic gold. Wreaths are not only meant to be hung on a front door. I tend to like to hang wreaths in windows. I will hang them on a wall. I might even hang a wreath over a doorknob or even just prop one up against a wall and create a vignette out of it. And we're going to have some questions and answers coming along. But what I wanted to do to start before we do Q&A is to do a live demonstration of cutting that ribbon for you. Somebody asked during the video I could do it. So I have decided to pull out the spool of ribbon and I'm going to show you how to do it. Let's see. Okay. So you've got your ribbon here and you want to fold it in half lengthwise. So what you're trying to create is a V shape here. So if you fold it in half, and I'm holding the very tip of this in my first two fingers and the bottom half in the second two fingers. Add a diagonal up to the two loose ends. And that's going to give you a really beautiful V shape. You want to be able to use really sharp scissors with doing this. And you also want to take your time because you don't want to fray the ribbon. So I'm actually going to turn this around because it's in my direction. So you're going to take from the middle and cut up. And that gives you a beautiful V. Really easy to do. So go ahead and send me some questions through if you have any. Again, thank you for joining. And this video will again be posted on Aspire's website and also on my YouTube channel at Home with Joseph. So please go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel so you can see the weekly videos every week. And it will also have previous week's videos in case you. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Home with Joseph. So please go and follow me and like me and see some of the other content that I have. about home economics and how I live in my house. And hopefully I can give you some great ideas about living well within yours, especially during this time of COVID. So I have a couple questions that are coming in, and one of them is, how much would you say you spend on materials for one of these wreaths? That's a great question. So I sourced most of my stuff through the wholesale floral market. And that's not to say that it's any cheaper than buying it retail, because I have to buy most of that stuff in a bulk quantity. So my pricing is a little bit skewed because I have a lot of materials left over, but I would say if you're going to order from Amazon or Michaels or Joann Fabrics, wherever you can get craft supplies from, I would say one wreath is probably going to run you $40 to $50 at the most for all of these materials. And again, it depends on really what you're using. I mean, I've spent money on French silk ribbon, and you don't have to buy this. You can buy it thinner. You can buy grosgrain ribbon, which is also very nice, and it's much less expensive. So it just depends on what it is that you're buying. But a wreath shouldn't be expensive. And the first one that you saw, most of that was cut out of my yard. So I didn't even hardly pay for most of that material. Another question, what are other materials you would suggest to use in making of the wreaths? You really can use anything. I mean, you can use anything from pieces of fabric remnants to pages out of old books. You saw I made the curls like that. You can actually make a whole wreath out of just that. You know, they're great keepsakes. So if you want to make one and keep it around, stuff some pictures of your kids in there. You can make wreaths with Christmas balls. You can do it with nuts and hot glue them onto a styrofoam wreath. You can use fruits that will dry on a wreath. It's really endless. So it's about using your creativity. I think the most important question is, what frame would I use for making what wreath? And you know, the green wire wreath is really great when you have to wire on a material on it. They also make wreaths made out of hay. It's just straw that's wrapped in plastic. And those are really great for hot gluing onto or pinning into. And then if you like, something that I love to do is when I'm in the garden and I'm cleaning up, I'll take old vines and I will just start twisting them. All the leaves fall off, and then I have a base for a wreath. And sometimes I might just take that form right there and just put a ribbon on it and hang it very simply, just a dried vine wreath. Let's see. Next question. What is the longevity on these wreaths? They'll last for as long as you keep them. These are not live wreaths, right? So if I was going to do a live wreath, maybe if I did one that was moss with succulents in it, you'd have to keep it watered and misted. So, you know, if you're not taking care of something like that, there is a longevity factor to that. You know, if you're doing a wreath with fresh material, say an herb wreath that you're going to make to hang in your kitchen, you can actually dry all those herbs right on the wreath and then use them for over the winter for making soups and stews and stocks, and just pluck right off of that wreath. So it really depends what kind of wreath it is, but I mean, they can last forever as long as they're taken care of. The next question is, where did you get the green moss? That green moss that I was called, I did source that at the wholesale flower market. You do need to be a business in order to go to the wholesale flower market, but I have found that they aren't accommodating to the average people. So if you do a Google search for wholesale flowers in your area, call them up, and if you just tell them you want a case of moss, it's fresh live moss. I'm sure they wouldn't mind selling it to you. But you can also go to your local florist and you can ask them if they can get you a smaller quantity. I had to buy a big box, so I had to buy a full case of it. And it's not expensive. A full case is about $35. But that was mood moss, and you can also get sheet moss. Mood moss is very clumpy, and sheet moss is flat, but they're both fresh live moss, and they both work fantastically well for these types of things. The next question is, will you have a list of supplies that you used and where to get them? Yes, thank you for that question, and I will put together a list. I will probably post it in my Instagram stories and on my Instagram page. So please check into there, and I will put it on Instagram so that it stays up. So if you don't get to it right away, it'll still be there. But go to At Home with Joseph and give me a day or two, and I will put up a source list for you. Can you mist the moss to keep it green and alive? Yes, you can, and you should. If you want to keep it super green, you absolutely should mist it. When you're misting it, it doesn't get a lot of water. So I'm going to say daily or every other day. Depending what else you have on the wreath, you could also just dunk the bottom of it in a little tray of water and let it sit there. But then when you take it out, you're going to want to let it dry outside, because if you don't, it's just going to drip water wherever you're putting it. But it should last and stay green. If you don't mist it, the moss will dry up, looks perfectly fine that way. But the grit, it will, after probably about 6 months, it will start to turn brown and lose its green color. The next question is, though I'm not sure one can reuse the materials for future projects, how do you recycle the materials? Let's see. So I apologize for the noise. Our lawn people are here. So it's COVID, Mercury's retrograde, and it's the election. So today, anything could happen. So yes, you can reuse the materials. I actually never throw the stuff away when I make wreaths. I will pluck all of that out of a wreath, including the moss, re-soak it, store it in Ziploc bags, and use it for future use. And I don't really know what that future use is at the time, but usually when I'm doing a craft project, something comes up and I remember, oh, I've got all this stuff. And that's the nice thing about dried stuff, is that it's reusable. So definitely save it. If you have fresh items in the wreath that are not lasting well, can you pull out and try to save the wreath without ruining it? Sure, you can. Be careful. Depending on how you make the wreath, you may not want to pull it out. You may want to get into the inside with a little pair of clippers and clip it out. If you start pulling, you might pull moss out. You might just completely disassemble the wreath. So just be careful. But yeah, you can pull it out, and you can also put fresh stuff in if you can get it through the back of the wreath. Turn the wreath over, and you can just wire that in so that it stays, pretty securely. The next question is, do you use a glue gun? Yes, I do. I did not use it on these wreaths. It didn't warrant it for these wreaths. I wanted to sort of display how to make a wreath without having to use a glue gun. But I have made Christmas wreaths where I've used all Christmas balls on it. And I've used a foam form for it, and I have hot glued them. So yes, I do. The next question is, thank you for this awesome video. You're welcome. Thank you for joining. Wondering how you decide which frame and base is best for the materials you're using. I'd like to use bay laurel from my garden. That will make a really beautiful wreath. And give as a gift, but not certain whether wire, styrofoam, grapevine is best. In my opinion, wire is going to be the best option. A lot of laurel in order to cover it and make it look full. And I would suggest that when you cut the laurel, cut short stems, bunch 5 or 6 together and wire those, and just get tons of those wired so that when you're going to work your frame, you can stack the laurel. You start one and you stack it inside of each other, but underneath so you don't see the branches, and keep wiring that way. But you could also use a styrofoam wreath, but you would have to use a floral pick with it, or one of the U-shaped floral pins that I did on the styrofoam wreath. You could use either, but I think you're going to get a better look with a wire form for that type of a wreath. And so that's it. That's all the questions that we have. Send me any more that you have. If you think of something that you want to ask in the future that you didn't think of today, or you're rewatching the video, please message me on Instagram. I will answer your questions. I will also feature them in my stories and answer them as well. So, you know, find me on social media. I can always be found and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Actually, a few more questions came in. Can you feature a wreath for Christmas? Sure, I can. I'm actually going to do, I will see if I can feature it as one of the features, because I'm thinking of doing a different series for Christmas, which is creating snow globes, sort of a unique Christmas decoration idea that I don't think a lot of people know about. Let's see. What are you showing us next week? I don't know. I make these up every week based on what I'm inspired by teaching you guys. Every week is going to be something about home economics. I hope to spread it out so that week after week it's going to be a different topic, from cooking and baking to crafting, collecting, a whole, you know, gardening, a whole myriad of things. It will probably be some type of a cooking segment for next week, since we have Thanksgiving coming up. Let's see. Love the snow globes. Oh, well, that will probably be a December one, probably beginning of December. But I make them every year, and I'm going to share the tools that I use and the material that I use and how I create mine. And they're not your typical snow globes with water in them. They're much different, so you can use them as centerpieces, or just decorate them around your house and create a collection of them. I've done them every year for the past couple of years, so I have quite a bit of a collection of them. And that's it. So I'm going to let my lawn guys continue to cut the lawn, even though they haven't stopped. I hope that wasn't too loud. And thanks for joining me. Again, find me on Instagram. Go to YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel. The more subscribers we get, the more we'll have the opportunity to be able to live stream from YouTube, which should be a little bit more advantageous for us. So thank you for joining, and I will see you again next week. And have a great election day. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I know it's a lot of uncertainty out there, but I think whatever happens, we're all going to be okay. Thank you.